Okay, so we're here for our next recording, which is Joli Vyann, Jan and Olivia. And so, kind of spoiler alert, the last time we were together was at your wedding. So, of our inspiring partnerships, you are a married couple, and I conducted the wedding. So, it's lovely to be back with you for this. This series is about people who've worked together over a long period of time, how they come together, how they inspire each other in their work, how they make a career together, how the hell they run their lives alongside their professional work, and all the good things about working in the outdoor sector. So that's what we're here to talk about today, and it's lovely to have you. So, first of all, Joli Vyann. What is Joli Vyann? Where's that name come
Well,
from?
people think that we're French because of the Joli often.
Nice.
But actually it's just an anagram of our names. And Jan is written with J, so we put that at the front. And then we sort of added a sneaky Y, because if we'd have used the J, it would be Joli Vyann, which we thought was pretty ugly. So we switched the letters round, and Joli Vyann, Olivia and Jan.
And what is Joli Vyann?
So we are a company, we mix contemporary dance and contemporary circus, and we use a lot of sort of character intention and theatricality with our work. We use a lot of contact-based lifting and partner work, and then we just take it that little bit further into acrobatics, mainly hand-to-hand and partner acrobatics, but we do use other forms of circus as well, sear wheel and juggling and various other things.
We'll talk a bit about how we came to that, but how much of your work is outdoors and indoors?
A lot of our work is outdoors. We started off just doing outdoor work. The first couple of years was just outdoors. And then we started to go indoors as well. So we do have indoor shows. But outdoors, we always, every year, we just set aside end of May till September purely for outdoor work, just because we have managed to create a really nice sort of summer touring season with our outdoor work, and because we love it as well. It's very different to indoors, and there's so many fantastic things about outdoor touring. So.
We'll talk more about that. Let's talk about, so it's quite interesting, because I first obviously saw both of you performing separately. So I've witnessed that journey. So Jan, before you became Joli Vyann, what was your career path?
So originally I did circus school in France, and then worked for a lot of different circus companies. And I met Angus and Olivia the first time. Olivia actually I met in Spain the first time on a tour with a trampoline company from Belgium called Local. And Angus nicely invited us to his festival, Watch Your Space, at the National Theatre at that time. And that was actually the first time we met him there. I was always interested quite a lot in dance already, in movement, so I was doing movement before I did circus. My background is martial arts, so I come from that part.
I didn't know that. So you had martial arts? Okay. Yeah. I see that in your work now you say it. How obvious, yeah.
So martial arts was my, as a kid I started martial arts. I did it for a very long time, worked as a stuntman first, and always liked the movement aspect of martial arts. And then it kind of like naturally happened to come into circus, and then when I met Olivia, it came to a different layer with the dance.
Yeah. So yours background is a dance background or gymnastics?
Yes, well I started doing artistic gymnastics when I started when I was 2. Wow. I mean, it was tumble tots, but because my mum sent me because I had too much energy and used to sort of rush around the house injuring myself.
Yep.
So I did competitive gymnastics until I was about 17, and then overlapped sort of dance, ballet and contemporary dance, and then sort of naturally progressed really from the gymnastics more into the dance side of things. And then I sort of just mainly stayed in contemporary dance, worked for contemporary dance choreographers and companies. I decided to give the gymnastics a bit of a break because it was very intense when I was younger, and I sort of kept trying to leave it behind, but then every dance job I did, they said, "Oh, you can do backflips," and I was like, "Oh gosh, okay, yes, all right," you know. So in a way, and then at one point, I just thought, "Should we just embrace this? Right. Maybe I should just use this." And it helped a lot at auditions as well, because as a dancer, there's sort of many people in the room. So I sort of then went with it and worked for lots of companies that then also wanted to use that skill.
What sort of companies were you working with?
So I worked with, large, quite an inspirational job for me was one of my first jobs, which was in Germany, at a Stadttheater there. So it was actually neoclassical.
Okay.
Yeah, which is interesting. It was actually to Mozart's Requiem. Yeah, so quite different, but really, really sort of quite inspiring partner work. And then I moved on to more sort of athletic choreographers and companies. I worked with Motion House for 5 years. And when I was with Motion House, that was when I met Jan.
Yeah.
And by the time I was working for Motion House, I'd sort of started to bring back the circus skills a little bit more seriously. Started doing some aerial work and, you know, handstands and just sort of floor acrobatics. And then when I met Jan, we decided, well, actually we didn't really decide, it sort of naturally happened where we started to mix skills. So he taught me hand-to-hand. I'd never learned hand-to-hand before I met Jan. He taught me hand-to-hand, and although he danced before, I sort of got the whip out a little bit and yeah, just sort of passed on a little bit more dance knowledge. And then,
I mean, to really simplify it, I mean, it's kind of circus skills over there, dance over here, and that's where they kind of come together as your identity is how it feels.
Yeah, and I think the nice thing was that there was already the dance side that Jan, before we started, and I'd already done the gymnastics, but it was quite sort of separate, and then when we came together, we sort of merged it all together, and now we try to sort of really make it 50-50, you know, so that it's a proper mix rather than separate skills.
That's why we're talking about partnerships. That's why it's interesting. Who else did you work for before? There was Circulation Locale.
Circulation Locale was like probably the most known in the outdoor sector. Before I worked mainly in German cabarets. So I worked in circus school in France. I was in circus school in France, and I worked for a while in France, but it was for an indoor company as well called HVDZ, Henrik van der Zee. Very interesting show concept. They talk about a lot about like the history of the northern part of France, which is similar to the north part of England. There's sort of like mining culture, which were all closed down. A very critical director, very interesting work. And
very critical director.
Very political.
Political, sorry,
political, yeah. And then I went back to Germany just because I was missing Germany, and I went back to Berlin for a while. And in Germany, there's not so much contemporary circus. At that time, it was very difficult to do contemporary circus. So I just decided to do more cabaret style work there. So I was working for 4 years in German cabaret scenes in like GOPs and Kristallpalast and Traumtheater, quite a lot of different ones. And
I don't know the German cabaret contemporary scene. I know the movie, but that's
So it's a different world. It's normally like more you play a number of like 5 minutes, and then you play normally 6 days a week, probably 2 days with double shows. It's quite intense, but it's paid quite well.
And is it circus-based skills? Or?
It's mainly circus and comedy, I would say. There's like a different background. Sometimes there's singers involved as well, or other things, but mainly circus-based. Yeah, it's mainly about the sensational aspect of things. So I did this until I had enough of cabaret, and that's when I looked out to do more outdoor work, and found Circulation Locale, which was quite a nice change from going to like a 5-minute show to go to an outdoor show of 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And seeing different people, having different audience, travel around more.
And both of those, I mean, so there's Motion House and there's Circulation. I mean, they're two significant companies in the outdoor sector, all from different countries. And of all the companies, you know, Motion House very much at that time leading the way in terms of dance outdoors.
Yeah.
So you were exposed to that development of the company kind of almost from the beginning of their journey there. So is that what kind of introduced you to being outdoors?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was very lucky, I think, because the first piece I did with them, Chaser and Underground, sort of at the same time, it was quite new that to have a dance company outdoors.
Were you original cast of Chaser?
No, I was the second cast of Chaser. Yeah.
An original cast of Underground.
An original cast. I created Underground with Kevin.
Wow.
Thank you. No, but and it was a fantastic experience because previous to that I had been doing like I said, some neoclassical dance and working with contemporary dance choreographers all indoors.
Yeah.
So it was my first outdoor experience, and and I loved it. And I think you learn a lot because we toured a lot. You learn a lot about the way outdoor work works. How different it is to creating an outdoor show to an indoor show, because half the stuff on the floor, for example, you can't put in outdoor work, nobody sees it. It's little things like that already I'd been exposed to. So when we started creating outdoor work, that was why we started just with outdoor work, because we felt like we had sort of quite a nice way in, and we'd met a lot of the people at the festivals, we'd made some contacts, and so
the big question, which came first, relationship or work? Between the two of you?
Relationship.
Yeah.
Actually, for quite a while, we were a couple for 2 years before we considered working together.
Yeah.
And that's a funny thing as well, because we never actually thought about working together. It just happened more naturally, I would say. So for 2 years, we were touring Olivia's Motion House. I was touring with some Circulation Locale. We were meeting a lot on the road, because both companies...
Literally on the road. Once we met on the motorway.
Which took quite a while to find, actually.
Jan was driving around for ages. I was saying, I'm on the motorway. He was like, which motorway?
Somewhere in France.
Somewhere in France.
Through the Péage, and again through the Péage, and again.
Did you? Sorry, I didn't know you had to.
That's quite funny. I was like, where? So you
obviously knew each other's work, and you were seeing each other's work. So then it's not uncommon for that's why we're doing it. It's not uncommon for couples to then work together in order, as much as anything, stop driving around motorways when you can't see each other.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a practical thing, isn't it?
I think we had 2 years of sort of touring separately and meeting like that. And luckily at the time at Circulation we're actually doing a similar tour to Motion House, sort of European. So we sort of did manage to meet at lots of festivals. And then after 2 years...
That's always good in a relationship to meet.
It's handy, isn't it? Yeah. And then after 2 years we sort of said, well, maybe we should see if we could try to make a show together, and then we might get to see each other a little bit.
Actually, the first step was that we thought maybe we should just look for work together.
Oh, yeah, we did.
So we first tried to see if there's companies who would do what we like to do. So we actually did a couple of auditions for other companies, and there were always more circus or more dance based, and we were a bit like, there's nothing really this style we want to do. Yeah, the balance we want to do. We had a clear idea where we want to go. So the 2 years long distance, we have trained, we did train already with that dance, we did train a bit of things, but we never really said it's training. We just said, it's playing around and doing fun things together. And then after having tried a couple of different companies where we did some R&Ds, we realized maybe we should work ourselves. Maybe just it's what we need, be our own directors. And that's how actually the first piece came together, which was just a trial.
Don't Drink and Dance.
Which was Don't Drink and Dance.
But you started to discover then a language for the two of you that was the skills fusing. You're pushing the dance, you're doing the hand to hand. And did you start feeling you were developing your own style as a couple?
Yeah, I think we did really, and I think we still are. I think it's a continuous journey. I think the last show, Outdoor Piece, last one there, we were really lucky because we managed to really sort of hone those skills and hone that partner work. And I think when we started Don't Drink and Dance, we created it in quite a different way, in that we sort of wrote a narrative first. That was our first step, and then we mixed the two genres, and we sort of bridged the gap with Contact really, because Jan was over with us at Motion House quite a lot, doing class with us, and and he, because of his martial arts, he was very natural at Contact, and obviously a natural base. But also we discovered that, I discovered with Motion House that, as a small person, I still wanted and could lift larger people, people bigger than me. And Jan also had done some flying before, so we sort of started to create that relationship before we started making Don't Drink and Dance. And then Don't Drink and Dance was sort of we were quite limited in time, weren't we? So it was made really quickly, but people still ask for it. It's amazing.
So just roughly explain what it is as a piece.
So
very quickly.
Don't Drink and Dance is a boy meets girl in a bar situation.
Where'd you get that idea from?
Starting off, I drink a bottle of wine, blackcurrant juice or whatever it was, and we sort of get quite drunk throughout the show. I'm sort of all quite coy, and he's after me. And then at some point, the situation reverses, and I turn into slightly crazy drunk lady, and then I start throwing him around, which is quite nice because people don't expect it.
No,
so and it's very theatrical and fun and silly, and that was our first. And we didn't actually plan on making a company at that point.
No.
We just thought we'll make this show, and then people sort of kept asking for it. We still don't have really a promotional anything for it because people just kept asking for it, and we were like, okay, well, let's do this then. And that was sort of the point where we thought, I think we've got something a bit different.
And it had a very easy. It's an easy setup. It's what you just said. Oh, I see what that show is. It sounds. But I think it's really interesting the thing of you picking up Jan. That's a trademark. I would always expect you to do a lift at some point in any of your work. It's something that I often see in motion house as well. That is almost the trademark. Is I would expect to see the small girl lift the big guy. You did it at your wedding, after all. So it really is a trademark. But it's really important. I think it is, and putting that on the streets is very strong. Right? And not everyone does that. A lot of gymnastic shows. So is that something you've got in? There's a narrative in that. Is that something that has fed into your work from the start? Surprising us with
absolutely.
Sort of
I think
I think when we work, we often do contact improvisation for hours, and just we put a theme, and then in this improvisation we often find ways to lift each other in a very natural way. And often, it's not I just lift you; it's really now I lift you, you lift me, and it just goes into each other, and we don't really think about what happens. And often then the work after is really to just find the lifts again and put them back together. That's actually often harder than doing the improvisation. But when we work together, it's quite natural that we say oh yeah, I just get picked up, or I suddenly feel oh, there's a platform I can use to be lifted. It's something we always like to have this interaction where the bodies talk and the lifting each other as part of this interaction. Because obviously in the circus tricks, there's a limitation because we need, for some of the tricks when they're more technical, we need a size difference, we need weight difference.
I can't have Jan standing on my head, unfortunately. We're working on it.
There is that trademark of you standing on Jan's head.
We always have a stand on it. We discovered that we were actually quite good at standing on head, and we started to do lots of different things while standing on head. The most recent one is I play the flute and he plays the saxophone at the same time.
I've seen that picture,
and that is so difficult. Actually, it's funny because once we're up there, I think people think, oh wow, that's but they don't go, oh my god, that's the hardest thing you've ever done. Whereas it really is the hardest thing we've ever done. Mainly because of the positioning of the head to play a sax and anyway. But I think that going back to the lifting, I think it's really important for us not only sort of physically, but also emotively as well, because for example in Lance Moir, the show is quite a roller coaster of emotions, and it does get quite aggressive, and the way that we managed to put that on the street and for it to be, because it just happened that way as we made it, we didn't set out to make a part which was actually quite violent, so because I'm just as mean to him as he, I throw him on the floor countless times, and I lift him, and I think that equality in a relationship is really, really important, and it's really important. It's really important in our personal relationship anyway, and so I think that transcends into our work, and it's something that happens in our indoor shows as well as our outdoor shows, because it is something I think more and more as a company that we sort of create as a trademark.
And it's interesting, again, audiences outdoors. I mean, I'm always amazed at how children really stay with that kind of work. And it's not unique to you. I see it, outdoors quite a lot. And it's the only place they'll be exposed to that kind of work. So are you aware of what you might be doing to audiences with this sort of reshaping our expectations and this balance?
Yeah, there's a very interesting part of like audience and seeing what you do to audience, which started with Don't Drink Dance already, because we never had an idea of how well it would go down in places like Stockton, for example, or Burton up in Trent. And it has something to do with like the drinking culture and the way of how we perceive each other when we drunk. And it's very interesting because people suddenly can relate to something quite abstract. Like even so Don't Drink Dance is more trick based, it's still like a dance circus piece which is outdoors, and you get people who would before not look at you when you try to give them a flyer, come after and invite you to the local pub and be like, oh yeah, can you come over, you were amazing. It's really interesting because I think it's a gateway for a lot of people to like experience art. And Dance More has an even stronger impact. Often people like crying after the show because something triggered in them, like, which might be through the relationship, it might be the ending which is not particularly a happy ending, or it might be something they read in the movement that they took for themselves and like thought about something that would come up. And especially it's interesting when you see kids' reactions. Often like kids realize a lot more than we would think about. So often like we have very little kids that like come after the show and say things like, oh, are you in love? Or we have some kids where the mother said, we had one kid in a wheelchair, which normally never watches anything more than like 5 minutes, and she said like there for like 20 minutes watching the show. And it's really interesting to see what you can achieve with the work and outdoor work, and which people you can reach that you would not expect to reach normally.
Now, working as a company, how do you function? You've got your relationships as a couple, you've got your creative side. What about admin as well? Because you do all that yourselves, don't you? You've got some turnkey support you, but you kind of do quite a lot of your own.
Yeah, we do. We're very lucky. We have Turkey Arts too. They do our indoor work. So we still have admin to do for that, but they do a lot of the majority of that, and they do the tour booking. The outdoor work, actually, we do everything.
Right.
So, it is a lot to juggle. I think that we've sort of got into like, I guess now it feels a bit calmer. When we first started, it was quite overwhelming, and it felt like our entire relationship was just work, because any spare minute we had to be building the company, and and now I think we've managed, because you can't sustain that.
No.
So I think we manage it by very definitely taking days where we say we're not working. It doesn't need to be a weekend. It can be a Monday, or we're going to ignore emails today. It's a Monday, but we were working the weekend. Let's completely have the day off. And we also, interestingly, so apart from scheduling time like that together, we schedule time apart as well.
Okay.
So like we have, there was a week recently where Jan went surfing for a week and I hung out with my friends, and we actually now we try to schedule that in, because working together and living together, running the company together, we feel like it's healthier to be able to miss each other sometimes as well. And because we're able to spend so much time together, I don't really know how we are able, but we just do. We're quite, it happens quite naturally.
We had some very interesting discussion in the beginning when we were setting up the company, and we're talking about like, do we really want to do this? Going from a long distance relationship into like working together was quite a big step and quite a big change. And there were some things we said like, this is really important, let's never forget it. One thing was to say, okay, relationship is first, company is second. So if any time we feel like the company takes over relationship, we drop the company, not the relationship. So like, it was a very clear thing. It was like, okay, we agree on that, but it's great. And then we take a lot of time actually off in the year to spend just time for each other, which is great. So we travel around December, January, between 4 to 6, sometimes 8 weeks, where we normally just like turn our phones off, turn our emails off, and just really like enjoy each other's company without thinking about work. And that actually is quite good, because it gives us a different perspective, and it gives us a different way of like what we are as a couple, instead of like what we are as a working couple.
This is just like great relationship advice. Pick up the company. It's really good to hear, and you're producing creative work together as well. So it's interesting that you have that locked away time that isn't work time for you. but actually some of the most fulfilling times are at creating, and you're doing that together as well. So
yeah, because we do love that, you know, for example, we've just been to a festival and, you know, we had massive audiences and, you know, and you share that together. And so, you know, whilst we're working, this is what you get outdoors, but that you don't get indoors. You know, you have that social life as well, because there's often a lot of people that you know, there's other artists, you know, you have a nice hub where you have drinks and chats and, you know, and I think to be able to share that together is also really special, and then that feeds into your personal relationship as well.
Yeah.
So,
and there is something, I mean, you did a little bit of training with me on acrobatics, and I never understood until you stood on my shoulders what being a bass was, and actually it's quite a privilege to support someone and have their trust in a perilous situation. And so I mean, you have that every day you're working. You have that as part of your work. It demonstrates the relationship, and I didn't like being a flyer at all. And I stood on your shoulders. Didn't like that at all. I immediately found my place, and I love that comes into your work as well. In terms of what inspires you have different undercurrents in your work. There's some political stuff that comes in there. There's and then there's stuff about relationships. What drives the themes for Joli Vyann's work? It's evolving, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think it's as simple as what's interesting us at that particular moment. So, for example, well, with Lance Moir, we were really interested in just the concept of relaxed acrobatics and how, because we've always hated this sort of, and now clap me, you know. I mean, there's a place for that, but for our work, that doesn't work. And so we were looking at sort of not having this sort of tension, but trying to breathe through it and trying to really, and that particular movement quality was something we were interested in at the time. And then the theme of the actual relationship of the couple came later. Right. So that was the driving force. But then, for example, the most recent show we've made, Anima, which is indoors, we're turning it into an outdoor show. Yep. That's about breath. And that was a theme that we were both interested in personally from our personal lives. So we got interested in a guy called Wim Hof, who he's called the Iceman. And he's amazing. He does breathing techniques and cold training, and he can control his autoimmune system. So he's really incredible. He does things like climbs Kilimanjaro in nothing but flip-flops and boxer shorts, you know, and sits in the snow and manages to melt snow around him. Okay, and he's so, so this character, but this was something that I personally got really into, went to some workshops, and then I was telling Jan about it, and actually Jan had been telling me for years and years, you need to have cold showers because I was getting ill a lot, and he was saying, have a cold shower. And I was like, no way, are you crazy? And then, of course, this Wim Hof started saying it, and I was like, oh yeah, actually. Yeah, I was like, for God's sake, I've been telling you to do that for years. So then I introduced that, and he then got into it as well. And then Jan got into also free diving breathing techniques. And so the whole breath subject was something, and he went spearfishing and went underwater for I was like, please be careful. Yeah. He did get us some nice scallops though, so that was worth it.
Is this your scheduled time apart?
This is a scheduled time apart.
Yeah, amazing.
So and so that was a really sort of a theme that we were really interested in personally, and then we decided to make a show about it. So it tends to work like that, doesn't it?
It's different. Sometimes we have very clear ideas. So Don't Drink and Dance was inspired by me moving to England and seeing English drinking culture first. Which I've never experienced.
And you didn't move straight back. Wow.
And I was very impressed by this thing of how fast people drink and how crazy they get. So I was like,
I think you were more surprised than impressed.
Yeah, so so that was a really and we thought oh, maybe we should just make a show which is has this idea. The next step we kind of went a bit further abstract. We talked about the idea of hand to hand. H to H stands for hand to hand, and it's just about physical contact, but as well relationships between people. And in the end, we wanted to have more people. So it was 4 people, and it was very interesting to see different constellation of how you can how you meet, what you do together, and how the relationship evolves. And as you came in as well.
Yeah.
It was very interesting to see, like, you know, when you come from a movement perspective, and then later on you see, oh no, there's actually much more in there. There's so much things in there which tells us about, like, you know, day-to-day life and, like, you know, couples, but as well jealousy and, like, you know, frustration and other things. So no, it was very interesting. Stateless was very much inspired by me growing up on the border of, between West and East Germany.
Yeah.
So
that's almost your most specific piece of work that I would call where it was
probably,
really
yeah.
thematic.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
It was kind of like, I grew up very close to a bridge which was destroyed in the Second World War and never built up again. And I found this bridge was always such a strong image for me because I knew there was this river. I mean, yeah, you could get over it, but there was not really a way over it very easily. And people would still try to swim it, even though it was quite dangerous. And at the same time, we had the first refugee crisis happening here. So we're saying, like, actually nothing changes now, and, like, you know, it's the same thing. So we started to, like, really research a lot into this problem of, like, you know, refugees, like, you know, where did they come from, what did they do, like, you know, who are these people? And it was more from a personal note. We really wanted to know who are these people. So Stateless was very much driven from, like, you know, us making an experience. So that was it was a very interesting part that created Stateless. Imbalance was more as well a personal experience. It was
Well, that was the beginning of our company. It was about technology and how we had, like, this crazy year of just looking at screens and not really, and then being like, oh, hello, you know, sort of, and it was, and so they usually derive from personal experience, but I think the thing with our work is that each piece is actually quite different, even though we have our sort of style. We work with different choreographers and different outside eyes, and that makes each piece. We're really keen to draw upon different. We don't want it just to be the same sort of movement recycled and put into a different theme. So we're really interested. Like Imbalance was quite technical dance, you know, more sort of pointed toes and straight legs and things. And Lance Moi, there's not a pointed toe in sight. So it's sort of, we like to make sure that each show is different in that way.
They're completely fueled by you as a couple. Have you had deputies in your show for each other at all? No. It would feel. I just think when I see, I'm thinking actually I saw the Bulzinis and Phoebe was off, and you know it's a husband and wife show to me.
Oh, I
and
see.
Suddenly,
as in covers.
Yeah, covers.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We
and
have.
And that's always kind of weird because you know she was great. She was great, but it was like, but it's not Chris and Phoebe.
Yeah, it's a difficult.
And what happens with that with you when you?
Yeah, we've had. I had some surgery on my wrist, and we had a cover for one of our shows. And I mean, there was that element for sure. The fact that they're not, you know, that Lily wasn't a couple with Jan.
Yeah.
But the other difficulty we have is that because the mix, the style is very us, and it's very difficult to get people with a professional dance background who also do hand-to-hand acrobatics. That's the quite a challenge.
You have to train people up for your forehanders.
Yeah, we have to train people up, but then also it takes time, and it's, you know. So, and we had I had a cover as well for our outdoor piece for Lance Moi, and again, I think the couple, the fact that Sophie wasn't your partner, that was probably quite a strong.
It's a different response. We get a different response from the audience. When we get an emotional response, we mainly get it when we both perform. When we perform with other people, we get a different response, which is often more appreciative of the work, but we don't get the emotional depth, I would say, so much.
I think people, the most common question after the show is, are you a couple?
Right, yeah.
They always say that, and I think they get quite sort of touched by it because of that connection. And, you know, I do trust him implicitly, and so I think that probably shows and that trust. Well, this is it. I mean, I have to trust him, and also, you know, I do think sometimes, because sometimes I'm doing something, I think, oh, this is a bit scary, and then I think, it's all right, Jan, catch me, it's fine. You know, and that sort of, I think that element of things, I think that's difficult when you're covering it as well, because we know each other personally. Then I guess that trust is not quite the same.
But it's something, it's intangible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right, outdoors. What's your first memory of seeing something outdoors, Olivia?
Well, actually,
Being in
yeah,
it.
my first memory was being in it, actually, yeah, which was underground. Chaser, actually,
Yeah.
with Motion House.
So you hadn't really been exposed to outdoors.
I hadn't been exposed
performance.
to. I'd been exposed to some busking work and some things in the street that I'd stopped and watched,
Yeah.
but never sort of like an outdoor art scene.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Outdoor, it's a complicated one because I think the first memory is of a guy. How do you say it? Spitting fire? No, you don't say spitting fire.
Fire eater.
Fire eater, yeah. That was one of the first things as a kid,
Yeah.
just because like it's so impressive.
Yeah.
But the first real outdoor experience came later. I was in circus school in France, and we would go quite often to see big festivals like Aurillac or Chalon.
Yeah.
I would see like lots of work there, and it's kind of interesting because I kind of like the first outdoor work I saw was quite contemporary and quite abstract.
Yeah.
A very interesting thing I remember from my
Sure.
very first outdoor shows that I saw that impressed a lot was Tango Sumo.
Oh, Tango Sumo. Yeah.
So I really liked the idea.
Yeah.
It's really
Well, I can see the echoes in your work. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's because like I don't know if you saw Ring 1 or Ring 2, which is actually very much martial arts based.
Yeah.
And the piece is actually like dance martial arts based.
Yeah.
And I found it amazing. I was
Yeah.
like, wow,
That's
you
great.
can do things like this.
I had it in the National. Yeah, it's one of my. Actually, it's one of my earliest myself. Who's been an inspiration apart from each other? You can't say each other. We've done that.
You mean artistically?
Yeah, in your outdoor work.
Well, I mean, I've got to say Motion House because they introduced me to it for sure.
And Kevin is a
Kevin-
particularly
Well, I mean,
fine exponent of the art.
yeah, and also Kevin. Kevin and I are very close, and he definitely personally he's also sort of really pushed us and really supported us. So he's definitely been one of my sort of mentors as well. I think artistically, as in company-wise, other pieces I've seen. I mean, I love Hurricane and their contact work. I think what's the piece with the piano? Where they play the piano? Dirk and Fiend.
Oh, Dirk and Fiend.
Oh,
Yeah, I love them.
and I love them. The thing with them
Very
is
different to you. Very gentle.
very different, but that's what I like. I look at them and I think, like you say, there's that gentleness, and I think it's still something that when you're making a show that you need that balance of, because we tend to be quite like,
Yeah.
and I think that sort of they're quite inspirational in the way that they create a piece.
Yeah. And it's very long shows.
And it's very long, and the way that they manage to absorb everybody for that length of time with that gentleness, I think is really inspirational.
Yeah, for you?
Like I said, Tango Sumo was one of my
Tango Sumo, yeah.
early ones that I really like. Funnily enough, some busking people I found amazing.
Yeah.
So busking is a completely different thing than what we do. But the skill of holding an audience, which actually not much things that you do with them. It's really mostly about how you engage with them, how you talk to them, and how you draw the crowd together to experience this thing. I saw some very amazing buskers and were actually quite amazed to see what's possible. Even though it's not a path where we go down, I found it really interesting to see what's possible in this world of street arts.
Yeah.
Recently I saw Chloe Zong. Have you seen it? It's a woman who climbs a 5-meter pole.
Right.
That's all she does, pretty much.
She does that over half an hour.
Over half an
something.
hour.
Right, wow.
But she's
Yeah. No, it's it's a very interesting piece because it's very slow and just very movement based, but it's really beautiful to watch, and it's interesting to see. It's more like an anatomical study of the human body and what's possible, what we can do, and I was kind of really drawn into it.
What's your proudest professional moment outdoors? We're on quickfire questions.
Okay, probably South Korea,
Wow.
Seoul Street Arts Festival, having one show, we had at least 2,000 people watching. It was like a football field of people, just to see of people. It was amazing.
Brilliant. Yeah.
That
one, but
that one as well. Recently, my grandmother came to make the effort. She's 94. She came to make the effort to come to Bremen to saw us there, which is like a 2-hour drive, and it's really hard for her. She doesn't move very often.
No.
It was very nice to finally perform for her because she wanted to see me for years and years, and we don't often perform in Germany. And I was like, okay, this is probably the closest one we get to you. And she actually made the effort to come and sat there, and I made sure she sat front row seat.
Of course you did. Of course you did. You're allowed to. Bit of advice to someone considering working outdoors. What would your top tip be?
Oh, I think to get, when you're creating your show, to get the rhythm of the show right, to really think about how you're going to capture the attention of people who can just get up and walk away whenever they want. And that, having the right rhythm, having the right structure, knowing that people are going to be all around you, knowing that too much work on the floor isn't going to happen. So it's that sort of, when you're really creating, to really think about your audience and to think about your environment.
Really thinking about weather. It changes a lot. Weather is like a totally different thing to indoors. Indoors you have perfect conditions all the time. Like, it's maybe you have to like adjust the lights a bit and be like, oh yeah, this is blinding, but it's great. But we performed from 40 degrees, burning heat, where we couldn't even touch the ground anymore. And like the audience was just like trying like to be in the shade somewhere far back there, to pouring rain and gales and slippery floor. There's a lot of things which happens outdoors that you don't have indoors. And often people go outdoors with the idea they have a day like this, beautiful sunshine, a lot of people, really easy. Half the time it's like you warm up somewhere in the cold without space. You go out on the floor which has just been mopped before and hopefully dries. And then it might just start to rain halfway through performance.
I've mopped those floors for you.
Yeah, you have.
And a particular outdoor experience that is etched in your brain. Greatest thing you've ever seen.
Oh, well, I'd say Hurricane actually.
Hurricane,
yeah, their last.
The four-hander?
Yeah, the four-hander. But the original cast.
Yeah.
Because I saw it
Very
without the
specific
original
cast.
No, I thought it was, I loved it. I thought it was incredible.
Divided audience.
Yeah,
Some
very.
people really don't like
That's
it.
why
I was very enthusiastic for it.
Yeah.
And is that a choreographic draw for you?
It is, yeah. It's definitely a choreographic draw, and I think because of the contact, the dance, there's no acrobatics in it, but it sort of comes across as quite acrobatic in its approach, because
it's interesting you say that. I would think of it as an acrobatic show, actually.
Yeah, no, you see, I look at it as a dance show, but as a really exciting, intense. You can see acrobatics within there, but I think that the way the show created is definitely comes from a dance perspective, and I just think it's really clever as well. I think the movement's really clever. I think the performers were very brave, and it was very intense as an experience. So
yeah, and she looks incredibly vulnerable.
She does.
And you feel safe for. But great thing for you.
Behind my head, there's two actually I can think of which are really interesting because they're on the different end of the spectrum, which I quite like. So there's Burnt Out Punks, which I saw at the National Theatre.
It's
just like
it's just like one of my most successful bookings ever.
Yeah, which was a mayhem of chaos, which is quite interesting to see in front of the National Theatre and actually see those people who drove that massive bus from Sweden and like seems to be like properly like pure street performers. But actually, having an amazing show.
And a bit too old for it as well.
Like really funny. And on the other side of the spectrum, a funambulist we're working together in France, who does nothing more than except walk onto his high wire, cross it, and then walk down again. But everything is in snail tempo. He does it as an old person, and you can see this old person.
And what's the name?
I don't remember his name. No, unfortunately, he's amazing, and he has this moment when you just believe him, he's this old. And he finished up by jumping in the river next to the stage, which is hilarious. Which he did just at the moment. He just said I saw the river, I want to jump in. And he just jumped in, which was great, which I loved.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for inspiring us in outdoors. I'm not going to say I declare you man wife. But it's lovely. Thank you for taking the time to record this for the archive.
Thank you for having us.
Lovely. Cheers. We're done.